Hey y'all, today I'm showcasing the full Nurgle wing of my Warriors of Chaos army for Warhammer the Old World. If you're new here, I've been working on an army project where I'm kitbashing all of my favorite Warriors of Chaos units for each of the 5 marks of Chaos. And my Nurgle marked units are all corrupted Bretonnians. And in my last video, I made the Green Knight, which means I'm finished with Nurgle. So let's take a look. Let's start off with my Daemon Prince. His name is Sir Everard de Valais, and I made this guy for an Instagram competition. I didn't win, but I made a video showing my process. In fact, almost all of these units have process videos on my channel, so check out the link in the description. I'll make like a playlist for all my Nurgle stuff. Anyway, this guy is the source of the corruption for my entire Nurgle Bretonnian army. He was a questing knight who was tricked into drinking from a false grail by an entity masquerading as the Green Knight. When he returned to his castle, the court alchemist recognized the Nurgle corruption and had his body encased in pure silver as a form of execution that would also contain the plague. Obviously it didn't work, and Nurgle raised him as a Daemon Prince, with the silver forever fused to his flesh as a living suit of armor. And I actually wrote all this up in a short story on my blog, so if you want to check that out, there's a link down in the description. So up next is my Swamp Hag. It counts as a Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot. She's my take on the Grail Damsels. And hopefully you're starting to see a theme with my army. Since Bretonnia is all about the realm, and the Lady of the Lake and the Green Knight are all embodiments of Bretonnia itself, I wanted to show a corruption of the land. So, like my Daemon Prince spreads plague through his literal steps, this Sorceress is pouring some vile concoction onto the ground. And after that we've got my Chaos Lord on foot. This guy's a mashup of the Khorne Slaughter Priest and some bits from Future Blight Kings. The head comes from this awesome artist named Saint Decent. His sword arm comes from Angron's arm, and the blade comes from the Hellstriders of Slaanesh. I always meant to go back and paint some heraldry on his shield, but I haven't gotten around to it. I don't really want to ruin it, you know? And here's my battle standard bearer. Quick little tidbit, if you read that lore blog I wrote, you know that my Daemon Prince, Sir Everard, has 2 companions. Well, this guy and the previous Lord on foot are those 2 companions, Sir Roland and Sir Giscard. This banner is sculpted from scratch out of green stuff, and I have a video on that process on my channel if you're interested. Check out my playlist for the Nurgle playlist and you should be able to find it. This guy was so much fun that I'm definitely going to make a custom over-the-top battle standard for every Mark of Chaos. I have an idea for Tzeentch and one for Undivided, but leave me a comment if you have any ideas for Khorne and Slaanesh. And remember, it needs to be over the top. Alright, and here's the most recent addition to my army, the Green Knight, which counts as a Chaos Lord on Daemonic mount. Check my most recent video before this one if you want to see the full kitbashing process. But this is the guy who corrupted Sir Everard and started him down the path to demonhood, and indirectly corrupted my entire faction. Sir Everard was on a grail quest, but he got lost and fell ill. This ethereal figure appeared before him, and in his weakened and desperate state, Everard believed that it was the Green Knight, with the true Holy Grail. But Roland and Giscard could see through the illusion, and here's what they saw from my lore blog. Back on the shore, Roland and Giscard watched. But it was not the glorious Green Knight that Everard knelt before. It was a grim, decrepit figure, clad in rusted plate, cloaked and hooded in filthy robes, and it was not mounted atop a glorious white charger, but rather a twisted, rotting wolf thing. Its eyes were pale cataracts. They looked like pus-filled boils in their red sockets. Even from the shore they could smell its hot, disgusting breath as it panted and wheezed. They could see the thick black ichor that oozed from its bleeding gums and fizzed onto the ground. Their hearts and their tongues had been frozen with terror when they saw Everard kneel before the rotten knight, but the spell was broken when they watched the scene continue to play out, and they screamed warnings from the shore. But Everard didn't seem to hear them, and their bodies were too weak with sickness to move, so they could only look on in horror as the rotten knight dismounted and approached Everard. The figure raised the false, fly-blown cup and began to pour its contents onto Everard's head, anointing him. Everard lifted his gaze and allowed the disgusting libation to pour over his face and into his mouth. The smell of the rotten bile hit the companions on the shore, and they retched. But the horrors were not over. After the cup was drained, the unwolf stepped forward. Its body began to convulse unnaturally, and a wet gurgle rumbled in its throat. Just then, its skin split, and its pelt began to slough off like a snake shedding its skin, or an animal rapidly decaying. The pelt slumped heavily onto the ground with a wet thump. Strings of connective tissue clung to the beast's raw, quivering flesh. Its unfocused eyes rolled in their sockets and it drooled more acid ichor onto the ice. It seemed half mad with pain. The hooded figure stooped to pick up the steaming pelt and placed it around Everard's shivering shoulders. Arise, Sir Everard, Knight of the True Grail. So we can see where my Daemon Prince Everard got that white wolf pelt that he's wearing. So that's all the characters in my Nurgle army, but let's talk about the rank and file units real quick. So here are my Chaos Knights with the Mark of Nurgle. The riders are a mix of Empire Knights, Puscoil Blightlords, and more helmets from Saint Decent. Basically, I was trying to avoid that Northern Barbarian look when I was making these guys. The big banner comes from Soulblight Gravelords. Since all my forces are in service to my undivided Chaos Lord on Dragon, I figured their banner could be depicting her dragon. A Warpstone meteor also factors heavily into her origin story, and Warpstone comes from the moon Morsleave. So on the banner I've painted the moon green, and we see 3 green drops falling into the Grail, hinting that possibly she had something to do with the corruption of my Bretonnian forces. Maybe the Green Knight is one of her generals in disguise, or maybe like a demon summoned by her sorcerer to spread corruption in Bretonnia. Who can say? And finally, here are my Warriors of Chaos with a Mark of Nurgle. These are the first guys I ever made for this army. They were an experiment before I even came up with the concept for the army. I just wanted to make some warriors that didn't have the Northern Barbarian look. Knights from somewhere else who got corrupted. So it was while I was making the first one of these guys as a test model that something clicked and the whole Bretonnian angle came flooding into my brain all at once. I mean, I didn't come up with the idea of Nurgle Bretonnians. They do exist in the lore somewhere. I know Age of Sigmar has the Order of the Fly, and I could swear that the Order of the Fly existed in fantasy as well, but I can't find any references to it anymore. Maybe I just imagined it. Leave me a comment if you know. So anyway, like I said, that was the list of models I originally set out to create when I started this project. And now they're done. And that feels really good to say because I've been in this hobby for over 10 years, and I've never finished an army project before now. This is the first one. It's got me really pumped to finish the other Marks of Chaos. Now, I have since come up with a few stretch goals for my Nurgle Bretonnians. For example, I really want to make a Chaos Sorcerer on Manticore to represent the Court Alchemist from my story. And I also want to create Everard's father, Baron Tybalt, as a lord on corrupted Pegasus. Or Plegasus? But for now, I'm moving on to the next Mark of Chaos, which I think is going to be Tzeentch. Now, I don't have a rule for myself that I have to focus on one mark at a time, so if you're a fan of Slaanesh or Khorne, I'll sprinkle some of them in as well. I'm just really inspired by Tzeentch right now, because I'm writing some cool lore for them lately. And I'm also really inspired by Wolves of the Sea right now, because the new Marauder box came out, so I'll be doing something for them very soon as well. And I've got some things cooking in the 40k world as well, but this outro is getting way too long, so I'll talk about that later. But leave a comment, tell me what you'd like to see me work on. And as always, check the description for any links to artists I may have mentioned. And of course, check out my Instagram link down there if you want to see all my other projects and works in progress before they make it to YouTube. Alright, like and subscribe, thanks for watching.